Welcome everybody to the 31st Annual Conference for Law School Computing, actually CALIcon, we call it CALIcon21. To welcome us to this venue, I've got Dean Anita Krug of Chicago-Kent College of Law. Dean Krug, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, John. And I know you just welcomed everyone, but I'm going to do exactly the same thing. It is my great pleasure to welcome everyone here to CALIcon 2021, sponsored by the Center for Computer-Assisted Legal Instruction, based right here at Chicago-Kent College of Law. I am Dean Anita Krug, as John just noted, and I am so glad to have all of you here with us today for this conference. And I just know that it's going to be full of insights on regarding our collective passion, which is legal education. And incidentally, this is really one of the very longest running conferences on legal education in the United States. And it started decades ago back here at Chicago-Kent. And technically, this conference is the marks the 31st anniversary of the conference. But I understand from my colleagues here that we're really not counting the virtual conferences. And which means that next year will actually be the 30th anniversary of the conference, because we're not counting this year and last year. And so we'll have a big celebration then and mark that anniversary properly in person. And incidentally, and I don't know whether I was supposed to mention it, but I think I can, next year it will be here at Chicago-Kent in person, and we will hope to see all of you again back here then. Also, you may wonder who all is in the audience. We have a good participation, and it's you consist of some combination of law faculty, not surprising, law librarians, IT professionals, and a miscellaneous group of deans, associate deans for academic affairs, other assistant or associate deans, et cetera, other law school leaders, and those also make up a portion of you. So, so it's a big group again, and I think that is maybe in part a product of the fact that it's a virtual conference again this year as last year. We registered a few hundred people, and I know people are still trickling in. And of course, it runs over a few days, so we would expect to see a large group of people attending sessions or otherwise part of this conference. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of it. And again, I really greatly appreciate that you're able to be with us here today. And with that, I will turn things back over to John.
Thanks, Dean Krug. All right, let's get started. So we will be starting shortly. No, we won't. We're starting right now. I get to be a floating head in this. So, so this is the 31st conference for law school computing. Well, we don't call it the Conference for Law School Computing anymore. We just call it CALIcon, right? 31 times we've come together. I can tell you some hilarious stories about the early conferences. Those of you who've heard them all are like groaning, saying, God, John, please don't. But a bunch of you, maybe 40% of you, are brand new. And in one way you perpetuate a culture is you tell the old stories. All right, all I'll say is hit me up at the Three Wishes reception tomorrow, and I'll tell some of those old stories. So first of all, I need to explain something. So I'm here in Chicago. No, I'm sorry, I'm here in Springfield, Illinois. My wife and I maintain two homes. She works for the state, for the Attorney General. And I stupidly, you know, in moving things back and forth, I completely forgot to bring like my suit, because I always wear a suit, you know, as the master of ceremonies of the conference. You know, so I ran out to Target last night and bought this, you know, literally the only shirt and tie that they had, because nobody's selling shirt and ties anymore due to the pandemic. You know, but I kind of smacked my head this morning, and I realized, you know, I don't have to wear a suit. I'm in an online medium. I mean, I can take this thing off, and through the amazing digital capabilities of my computer, be anybody I want, for whatever purposes we might need here, right? So let's just, there we go. All right. Of course, it's all jammed up. There we go. So much better, much better. Now let's, of course I can wear my suit, just like I always do. I just got to keep my head real still and make there, or I could be like, big head John, on the small suit. I don't know, that might work. But, the possibilities are endless in this sort of thing, right? I could be a Supreme Court justice, because this is a legal education or a legal education and technology conference. And I noticed that my green eyes, also shoot through. That's weird, huh? I could look the way I think that my board looks at me, right? Here I am, the magnificent executive director, of CALI. Oh wait, I would just cross my arms and you can't see anything, right? There's the hands. Now this is the way I prefer to think of myself, to my staff, right? Lego Batman. I'm capable. I've got lots of tools, lots of ideas. I speak in a low voice. So that's my favorite. But in reality, my staff sees me this way, right? And actually, I'm from Chicago, so that this is really how they see me, bozo, right? The point being, you can use this capability. And here, I should pause at this moment and make the bozo face. So if any of you want to take a screenshot and tweet it out. Matter of fact, the first person to tweet this and at me, at John P. Mayer, I'll send you a special surprise gift. All right, that's long enough. There we go. So let's just stick with the suit and tie, because I'm the executive director guy. There we go. I was going to do a Hulk one, but then I realized Hulk is got green skin and you can't see him in a green screen environment. All right. So 31 conferences, but back in the old days, the very first conferences, it's really hard to read this, I know, but it says Conference for Law School Computing Professionals. We had the audacity to this was Tom Bruce and I, we were the ones who started the conference. We had the audacity to say, there's a profession here. There's professional people working in technology in law schools. So let's call the conference for Law School Computing Professionals. A few years later, we dropped the professionals. We just called it the Conference for Law School Computing. And after a while, people were just calling it the CALI conference anyhow. So that's where the name comes from. But right from the beginning, the goal was always, right? The faculty would go to ALS, the law librarians would go to AALL. Lots of groups had their own thing. And that's great. They were building community and sharing ideas. And there wasn't one just for law school computing people, and part of the problem was there almost aren't enough of them. And the second problem was we wanted them to feel like they were more a part of the community of legal educators than I felt, than Tom and I felt at the time. And so the goal of the conference was always to bring together the technoids, which is a collective term, I believe, coined by Ed Richards at Louisiana State. LSU, and the law librarians and the law faculty, each presenting on some aspect of some overlap of technology and legal education, but attending each other's sessions and seeing and learning and talking and interacting, building community in that way, breaking down walls, all that wonderful stuff. So that's where the conference always sat, right in the middle of those, broadly speaking, cohorts. And I say broadly because in truth, today, those cohorts are much more, permeable. Students doing tech projects, instructional designers. I was at a meeting last week of innovation and practice labs at law schools, and there's 11 or 12 of them, which blew my mind. I mean, back when I started for Chicago Kent in 1987, I was working for the Center for Law and Computers. And I think there was that, and there was the folks at Cornell, at the LII doing their stuff. And now there's 12 and probably more schools doing things in civic tech, access to justice, AI, ML, doing multidisciplinary, I spelled that wrong, that's embarrassing, data science, legal medicine, civ tech partnerships, you know, and as you'll see, the academic success people are involved in the use of technology in legal education as well. So this is the breakdown. Just got this hot off the press like 4 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago of the attendees. And you can see lots of law librarians have shown up, and that's great. Hey, law librarians, we love you, and we hope you continue to use our stuff. And you know, but the three big groups, as you can see here, are law faculty, law librarians, and information technologists. You know, these are not precise categories, but this graph shows just how there are lots of other groups, there are lots of other cohorts, or how you identify whatever it is you're doing within legal education. Cool. So about 30, actually, I think 40% of you are new to the conference. I always feel like we should do a new person orientation. One of the things about the conference is we like to have fun. We like to eat snacks. So the swag box, which I hope most of you got, had a mouse pad and a t-shirt and not as many snacks as we would have liked. You know, budget cuts. What can I say? It's expensive to run a conference. I promise you, next year when you come to Chicago, we'll be back to our usual brand new snacks every single break. Okay, I will tell that story. So I was reading through the reviews of the conference, and you know, it was Likert scales. You know, people like, how did you, 1 to 5, how did you like the speakers? And it was like 1, 5 being the best. You know, how did you like the venue? 1. How did you like you know, the sessions? 1. How did you like the food? 5. And then overall conference, 5. So no matter what you do at a conference, if you feed people well, they will appreciate your efforts. All right, let's get to some thank yous and some housekeeping. I always start by thanking my wonderful staff, without whom I wouldn't be a floating head here. There's 11 of us at CALI. We're small, but we bat way above our weight and work very hard to do cool stuff with many of you. I always got to thank my board of directors. This is the executive committee of the board of directors: president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. But here's the full board. We've got new folks on the board. We've got folks who've been on the board for over 20 years. They steer me right. I fight back. We do great stuff together, and I really appreciate their counsel and advice. This is just a snapshot of some of the 300 people that we work with: authors and CALI editorial board people. You know, we wouldn't be putting out over 1,000 lessons and over 50 case books and podcasts. We're now up over 100 without all these people that we work with: law faculty, law librarians, you know, who help us and who we work with to create our content. And of course, all the speakers at this conference. It's a smaller cohort this year because we got a single track, and they're doing 15-minute sort of punchy short things. That worked very well, and your feedback said that worked very well. So we're doing that again. But man, we can't do this conference without the speakers stepping up and sharing their experiences. Of course, I can't not thank the sponsors: Power Notes, National Society for Legal Technology, Procertis, Exam4, Charter Course, Media Current, and the free law folks, Justia and law.cornell.edu, LII. And nope, I'm not blocking anybody away. Wow, I actually thought ahead a little bit on my PowerPoint. All right. Use the Q&A and update the good questions, you know, and use the chat. And remember, it's not private, so careful what you say there. That's the equivalent of saying that the mics are hot, but you can't see each other. We can't see you. That won't be true for the reception that we're doing tomorrow. That will be an actual Zoom meeting. All right, and that's going to be at 6:15 p.m. I call it the Zoom 3 Wishes reception. Come with your what you wish the future of legal education will be. That's not a requirement. I'm just trying to hook you with something there, right? I love that picture, by the way. Of course, bring your favorite beverage. Has to be Corona though, right? Haha. All right, that's a really old joke. Tomorrow, the schedule is like a little different than today and Friday. On Thursday, we start an hour early because we've got a special presentation by 5 of the 7 law school success fellows. I joined them in a similar presentation that we gave to a bunch of Turkish law schools and law faculty and stuff like that. And it was fantastic. They'll talk about the law school success lessons. It's tomorrow at noon. They'll talk about the law school success fellowship that they did and what they think the future of using computer assisted instruction can mean in dealing with the diversity gap and the equality gap in legal education. All right, this is just a picture of some of the titles of the lessons. These are unusual for CALI in that they don't cover substantive law topics like torts or contracts or such. They're meta, they're learning about learning, and they've been very popular, as you might imagine, in this past year during the pandemic. All right, we'll have a raffle. We always do a fun raffle every year. There's going to be the board members and staff are not eligible, neither are sponsors. We got a Stealth Angel Mystery Survival Box. Even I don't know what's in it. A survival kit because you had to survive the pandemic. COVID-19 means more than a virus. It also means the 19 pounds you might have put on the COVID-19. So we've got a plank play game that you can win. We got 2, you probably used your microwave an awful lot. So we got a couple of microwave steam cleaner thingamabobs here. And the penultimate, one of the penultimate giveaways, 2 Thanos Infinity Gauntlet oven mitts with all 5 Infinity Stones pre-installed. So you can snap your finger and have lunch. Also, through the very generous donation by Justia, Tim Stanley, there'll be a number of gift cards that will be randomly chosen by a random name picker, and we'll let you know when that happens. John, watch the time. You bet. I'm almost done. God, I go on and on and on and on. Here's the tweet tag, CALIcon21. Follow CALI.org and also follow me, please. And I'm done with housekeeping. Now let's get right into the keynote. So we have for you today the fact that in March 2020, faculty went away and spent hundreds, maybe thousands of hours learning some digital video literacy. They had to organize themselves online through a new medium. They had to learn a lot of new skills that they were forced to learn in regards to distance learning, right? And I would claim that these are foundational skills. These are a skill that we can build on going forward with legal education. We don't have to just toss it all aside now that the pandemic is over. And so we've got Michael Wesch, who is a professor. I always blank right at this moment. He is a professor of cultural anthropology at Kansas State University, but he's very famous on YouTube. Before I get to that, he's got a free course with a free book on cultural anthropology at Anth101. I suggest you check it out. Here's the book that you can download or buy a paper copy at Amazon. But he's probably best known for his 20 million views on YouTube, where he explains things like how to do video in legal education. I love this quote from his YouTube page. You don't have to teach online. You can teach out in the world without walls and without the walls that our preconceived ideas create of what teaching online has to be. So Michael, let me come talk to us, and I'm really glad to have you here. I'll hit stop share.
All right. So I kind of went through the crisis that many people went through in March last year. I went through it basically 3 years before everybody else because our university went through some budget cuts and and basically I was forced to teach online. And I want to share with you kind of my transformation during that time and where I'm at now. And I guess I'll just say that now I'm very excited about what can happen online. There are a number of reasons why I've kept teaching online, even though I'm not required to. So I teach both online and in person now. And I just want to share with you basically a variety show of 5 video types that I've used and how I use them in my classes. And I teach anthropology, so it's not law, but I think there'll be some transference here. And the first thing I want us to think about is, what is your real goal? My goal will not be your goal. And that in part comes down to our different disciplines and our different teaching environments. So you have to think about what your goal is. Now, my goal is, I'll just simply say it's magic. That is, I want a transformational outcome for my students, because I can remember when I first arrived at college, and I was a Kansas State student here as well. This was me, and this guy hadn't read a book since he was 8 years old. He had never left the country, and he thought he had it all figured out. And I walked into this anthropology class and everything changed. I was sitting in this giant class, and there I am, like, out in the audience, and I'm reading the textbook and going over the these new words that we're learning, and everything was just opening up for me about how different people around the world could live and make a living, and the different beliefs and ideas and values they could have. And it really just like completely changed my worldview and my outlook on the world. Pretty soon I was wanting to go out and see the world for myself. And so just 2 years after that class, I went to the most remote place that I could imagine, the most different place that I could imagine. And that was Papua New Guinea. And I brought this little Frisbee with me, and it just allowed me to make friends everywhere I went. I ended up joining a soccer team and just had like the most amazing summer. This is my friend Lazarus, who became one of my best friends for my entire life. I watched him become a father. This is our brother Penny, and he became a father. And I watched girls become mothers. And eventually I ended up naming my own kids after the kids that I fell in love with in New Guinea. And ever since then, I've been going back, and we've now shared over 1,000 meals together. So it's pretty obvious that this was a life-changing event for me, that just walking into that class. And I want to do the same thing for my students. So the second thing is, like, what is your mission? And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to really center yourself on what your core mission is. And I don't think your mission should be just, I want to help my students memorize some concepts. It has to be something more than that. So for me, I want to sort of deliver this idea that anthropology is this never-ending search for a story that we can live with. And the we here is as broad as you can imagine. It has to honor all the voices and elements of the we, that is truthful to our past and our diversity, that allows us to prosper into the future and live more deeply. And this is such a huge mission that I have to be humble in my pursuit of it. I can't pretend that I have the answers to how humanity can prosper into the future. Instead, you have to approach such questions with great humility. And I think that you could imagine, I think in your own classes, some really big, outstanding, fundamental questions that demand your humility. And I think that's always the best way to approach a class. So that sort of sets the stage. And now I want to sort of set the challenge. So when I was teaching to this room, where I actually myself was inspired, I found that pretty easy because I remembered how I was inspired. And, but then things shifted and there became this challenge. So if you look back at 2004, when I first started teaching, there are a few things you can note about this room. One, there was no Wi-Fi at the time. There was no YouTube, Netflix, or other high quality digital content. There were very few laptops and even fewer cell phones. And in fact, there were no smartphones. And the only real technology of note in the room is this little dot up here, which I controlled. This is the projector. So I controlled the narrative. I controlled everything about that room. And I was able to introduce students to things they had never seen before because they didn't have access to YouTube, Netflix, and other high quality content. By 2017, that room has been remodeled. It looks a lot nicer. And a number of other things have shifted as well. For one, there are extremely seductive distractions throughout the room. In fact, everybody in the room has their own distraction in their pocket. There's also a number of mental health issues and rising mental health issues. there are alternative facts and filter bubbles so that everybody is living in sort of different universes of information and knowledge. And there's also shrinking faculty and shrinking budgets, which means that I have to teach online as well. So these are all some of the big challenges that are facing. And that doesn't even get to these impressive low-cost alternatives that are really a challenge to education as we know it. Like, let's say, it's actually really, these things are really good for learning, but they're not good for institutionalized education because they are low-cost alternatives like Netflix and YouTube. And just for an example, like Morgan Freeman has this series called The Story of Us, which is basically an introduction to cultural anthropology class. Like, do you really think that I can compete with Morgan Freeman? And the answer is no. And I found that out very quickly when I had to start teaching online and I'm facing the webcam. And I'm sure you've had this experience. I mean, that is your experience of teaching, is just looking at this webcam. And it can be very lonely and force you to sort of face all your fears in ways that I had never really faced them before. And so the first time I looked at that webcam, I ended up on my floor in despair. And then I watched my first recording, and this is me literally saying, I'm super excited. This is the moment I said, hey, I'm super excited for this class. And this is what I looked like. And I realized that I wasn't really all that excited. And I was back on the floor again in despair. I just could not find a way to look the way I thought I looked. Like, I thought that I was excited. I thought that I loved anthropology and that my love for that would transfer across the camera and into their computer screen, but it just wasn't happening. And I just felt like I would never get it right. And then I, sent out my first video for the class, and this is the engagement graph from that. And you can see the first 2 minutes are pretty good, and then it just falls off a cliff and it just dangles down here. And it turns out this first 2 minutes was just like this sort of hype video that I created. I'm not on the screen. And then this is where I start talking, like right here, and it just falls off a cliff. So I'm back on the floor again. So eventually I, calmed myself and I thought, okay, what can I actually learn from Netflix and YouTube and Morgan Freeman? And over time, and this is now like a 4-year journey, I've developed 5 types of videos that I use in my class. And I want to show you how they fit into my classes. So I have to start with the setup. And the setup is something I really care about. I've put a lot of thought into this over the years, and I think I've hit the right tone for the classes that I teach. This might not be right for your classes, but this is what works for my classes. And remember, I'm teaching, undergraduates in classes that they probably are forced to take for some sort of diversity requirement or something like that. And so that just gives you a little context. And this is how I set it up. I basically have 5 elements every week, and they're the same 5 elements each week. And you can just like look at, this is what my Canvas module looks like. And you can see every week it looks basically the same. It has these same 5 elements. And if you were to kind of look at these a little more carefully, I tell my students that they should spend about 6 to 9 hours each week on these activities. And I just break it out like this. Basically, you'll spend about 3 hours on the readings. I put readings in quotes here because I use a lot of videos and podcasts and things like that. You'll spend about 2 to 3 hours on a quiz and a reflection. And then you'll also spend about 1 to 3 hours on some sort of activity. And usually that's something that puts the ideas into action. And it's often kind of fun in a way. I actually like try to make activities that students would want to do even if they weren't required to do them. That's my threshold. So then I make all of the actual assignments. The bottom 3 here are due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And that's to accommodate the wide range of different schedules and commitments that my students have. But I also tell them that we're going to run the class as if, they're watching the intro video and the big ideas on Monday. They're doing the readings on Tuesday, the quiz on Wednesday, reflection on Thursday, and activity on Friday. And that kind of creates a rhythm to the class. I'm a big fan of rhythm and simplicity. Everything should be so simple that the students can remember exactly what's going on every week without having to check in on some complicated syllabus or schedule. So the 3 elements that they're graded on basically represent 3 different things, like content mastery, the ability to express ideas, and then the ability to put ideas into practice. and then 60 points a week times 15 weeks, that's 900 points. And then I have my students do a final portfolio of their favorite ideas worth 100 points, and that brings them to the full 1,000 points. Again, simplicity is king here. So that's what my setup looks like. And now I want to show you how the videos fit into that. So this is going to be a bit of a variety show here in which I showcase a few of these videos and show you what they look like. This is what a typical week looks like. And you can see if you click on, say, like the overview, you get something like this. And the overview always has the same basic elements. There's always some sort of 10-minute hype overview, which is both a hype video and a quick introduction to the key concepts and ideas. There's also a big ideas PDF that they can print out and use as a framework for their notes. And then I also include a mixtape, which is basically a podcast recording of all the materials with some of my commentary built into that as well. So you can see every week looks exactly the same. And if we just like look at one of these hype videos, like these hype overviews, I'll just play a little bit of this one here.
How you define consciousness matters here, but
Yes.
Plants are conscious. They're aware of their environment. They have senses. They're not like our senses, but
Right.
they're picking up on chemicals in the air and in the soil and light in very specific ways, and they're reacting, not just instinctually, but appropriately.
You had this weird feeling of them having much more sensitivity than you imagined.
The world as we perceive it is dependent on the particular senses we have.
So that is actually what I showed you in that first graph. The engagement is very high at first, and then you can see it drop off. Now, it turns out I did a little bit more investigating into this, and the engagement here is not really 100%, basically. It's actually more like 200%, because what this graph was showing me was that some number of the students were actually rewatching the first 2 minutes of the video over and over again. Like they found it that engaging. And then the rest of this was watched by everybody. So even though it says, 60%, this is really, if you look at the actual numbers, it's about 50, and I had about 50 students in the class, and you can see all 50 students are watching the whole thing. But what's really cool to me is that a bunch of students were rewatching the first part over and over again, which was exciting to me. And it made me really like hit on this idea of like, I need to do more of these kind of hype videos like that. So this is what a hype video looks like. This is, here's some of the elements of it. It's basically just a bunch of stock video. And it usually takes me about 15 minutes to 16 hours to create one. The more complicated one, 16 hours, the simple one's 15 minutes. And I can show you how I make one in about 5 minutes if you're curious. If that's something people want, just hit it up in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will feature that later in this talk. The purpose of these is to engage and excite students. It's not really to inform them. And it's to get them really thinking about the purpose of this, like get them excited about the why of what we're doing. So it's great for class trailers. This is actually the trailer for my Introduction to Cultural Anthropology class. If I zip ahead here, you can see it's not just about different cultures, it's also about, like shifts in technology and genetics and all kinds of things, getting into, the challenges of our modern world and so on. So that gives you, it's also great for weekly introductions, as you saw here. Like, so every week I have some kind of hype video. Now the hype video also includes an explainer piece, which I'll get to. That explainer piece is built off of this big ideas PDF, which is usually like 10 big ideas. And here you can see them all listed out. And I just, if you want to, this basically serves dual purposes. It's not only great for their notes, but it also serves as more or less a script for a conceptual overview video. And I usually just kind of try to, convey this or say this over some great stock footage and a few PowerPoint slides in some sort of engaging way. And so I'll give you an example of that here so that you can see this is about the origin of religion. And here's what the opening of that looks like. What is the origin of religion? A lot of you have an answer to this in your faith, but from a scientific perspective, we have to look a little differently at these things. So I'm going to try to frame that scientific perspective for you. I'm going to try to be as honest as I can be about what we know and what we don't know, and also let you know that that knowledge is always changing. The first thing I want to show you is these caves here. So imagine walking into one of these caves. These were painted about 30,000 years ago. A lot of anthropologists interpret these as temples. Something religious is going on in these places. All right, so that's just the first, minute of a 10-minute video that goes through all of those 10 big ideas. So I call these like explainer videos. And an explainer video is basically, I use stock video, PowerPoint, and narration to do this. Sorry, this is getting cut off just a little bit here. I'm not sure why. It takes me about 2 hours to 2 days to create one. And it basically is to explain, summarize, and synthesize the main ideas for that week. It's great for key concepts and great for kind of this intro video that I just showed you. Then the third element here is this mixtape. And this is not really a video. I've called it a video here in my 5 types of videos. And the reason why I call it a video is because it's basically the same process. You're still putting things into a video editor and editing, but you're only concerned with the audio. And this is also, it's the easiest one to do, and it's the one that my students appreciate the most. So I'll just show you a bit of how this looks. So this is what a module looks like in my class. And if we just click on the first like main thing here, you can see I've got a little hype video here. I'll play a little bit of that.
In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship.
And then I've got a number of other videos here that I've picked out. I've got some debates. I've got sort of intriguing TED Talks, and I've got podcasts, and I even stories and stuff. And I even have some stuff where I've actually interviewed former students about their experience in the class. And these go over really, really well. And you can see all of these have a digital output of some kind. They're all videos or podcasts. And then I also usually have about an hour of reading. And what I do with the reading is I actually read it to the students so that it's more accessible. And I now have a digital output again. I have an audio format. And that allows me then to just take all the material and I can lay it out on a timeline in my video editor. And then I just add these I add a little introduction. I add little breathers here to sort of explain, why I'm assigning the next little piece and what it's about and what to look for. And, students just love this. Here's I do this little, I made a little hype video for mixtapes. And this is what I give to my students when they first start, in the first week, so they get an idea of what the mixtape is for.
If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly.
If you're too involved in defending your beliefs, you're going to be willing to kill other people in their defense. Don't stand up for your beliefs. You leave yourself bereft. You're open to the depredations of the infinite. That's equally intolerable. It seems to leave no way out.
I'm still not sure what you believe on that point.
Well, I don't know why you would expect to be sure about what someone believes. How do you think that any one of you are capable of fully articulating what you believe?
Belief, which we make such a fuss about today, is only a very recent religious enthusiasm.
All right, so you get the idea of what a mixtape looks like, and it's really great because you get to have all these different voices sort of talking to each other. It just provides a really rich environment for students to learn in, I think. So the mixtape is basically a 2 to 3 hour podcast of all the readings. One of the great things about it is it forces you to really know how much you're assigning. Like if I promise 3 hours of reading a week, I know I'm going overboard if I can't actually fit that into the mixtape, since it includes all of the readings. The nice thing is that this is much easier than creating a video. So if you only do one of these things that I suggest, this is the one I would suggest most, is actually making a mixtape each week. It's super convenient for students. It increases accessibility. And if you're not familiar with the universal design for learning, that's a great thing to look up. It's just a great set of guidelines for thinking about teaching to all students, regardless of where they're coming from. And it also, I think, allows you to be more close, deep, and authentic with students, especially if you have a problem talking to the camera like I do. Like I freeze in front of the camera. I can't quite be myself in front of the camera. And so I find it's really great for big ideas and reflections to just like be talking to the microphone, just sort of just be here with myself in very deep thought with the microphone in front of me and just to talk to my students.
I have dyslexia, so reading books is really hard for me, but if you hear it and see it, there's a connection.
Even if just being able to open the module and look and see that it was a 57-minute audio recording, I would know that I need to devote at least that much time.
I'm also an athlete at K-State, so I'm very, very busy and I have a job, and I could turn on his recording when I'm driving to practice or when I'm doing laundry.
I think I folded laundry a lot of the time while I was listening to the...
Seriously, it's...
All right, so you notice that everything I've done so far is very sort of top down in its approach. Like it's basically it has this model of learning where there's this object to be learned and I'm the expert, I'm delivering it to the amateurs. And that's not a class, really. That's just, delivering information. So a real great class is going to have like this living subject at the center of it. And we're all knowers and we're going to be discussing and sort of pushing this subject around and really bringing it to life. And that's what great courses are all about. So there has to be another avenue for that. You can't just be delivering content, right? And so for that, I tend to use what I call super simple videos. This is just me picking up my camera, often my phone, and just saying something to the students to engage with them in their conversations, in the discussions. And so a super simple video is super low tech. It's just your phone or your laptop, whatever you're most familiar with. It's very low prep. I say here less than an hour. I would say it's often less than even a minute. You're just like reading a discussion. And if you have something you want to say, just go ahead and, click the record button and start talking to your students. Students really respond well to this. And there's no editing involved, so it's super easy and it builds stronger relationships. Most importantly, it builds for the student, it builds a sense of instructor presence. It's like they know you're there, they know you're listening, they know you're paying attention to what they're saying and what they're writing, and that you care about their ideas and how they're developing. So I find that it's great for discussion starters, it's great for feedback and announcements and things like that. And it's just super easy to do. And it's also, again, one of the most important and powerful things to do. When some outside interviewers asked my students, which videos of Dr. Wesch's impacted you the most, they said things like the one where he mentioned my name and discussed my ideas. So even though I make these like really complex videos that take me like hours and sometimes days to create, it's the low hanging fruit that is having the most impact in these mixtapes and then these super simple videos. So if you look at the 5 types, I've mentioned 4 already. So the first 4, I'd mentioned the hype video, the explainer videos, the mixtapes, and super simple videos. And the 5th one is my favorite one to do, but it's also the most difficult, and that is the adventure video. And basically an adventure video is just me going out into the world and really taking my students into my practice and showing them what I do and how I do it. And so for me as an anthropologist, that means taking them around the world to share with them, new friends that I meet and new things that I see and new things that I learn along the way. So here's an example of kind of one of these here. And you can see it's mostly just raw adventure clips. These take about 2,000 to 10,000 days to create. I say 10,000 because that's how long I've been going to New Guinea. But a lot of them are just like a 2-day thing. And the really great thing about these is that you can show students what I call the hidden curriculum. It's where you express all the ideas that are a little bit more difficult to express otherwise. Like great questions that burn in your soul and take you farther than you've ever been. go farther than we've been ever before. So, I want my students to know that people are more different than you thought, but they're also more the same. And that most importantly, it's possible to build amazing lifelong friendships across tremendous cultural divides. So that's why I do the adventure videos. There's a huge payoff for them, even though they are obviously very difficult to create. So that then is the 5. And I want to get to sort of tips and tricks. And this can be sort of a choose your own adventure a little bit here. I see that some people are interested in how I do the hype videos. Some people ask about copyright issues. So the copyright issues, I'll just briefly address. You saw I actually used some popular movie clips. Basically, there is that's all within the bounds of fair use, which those laws are different based on what country you're based in. Here in the United States, we have really quite good fair use laws, especially for educators. You'll notice that when I use those clips, I'm never saying the same thing that movie is saying, right? So I'm transforming it in some way, and that's a key element. It should be transformative and should exhibit your own creativity rather than just sort of hijack the creativity of somebody else. For me, the easiest way to think about it is, as a video creator myself, if I would be upset with the way people are using it, then I should probably look a little more carefully at whether or not I'm in bounds or not. There's also some really good guides. University of California, Irvine has some good guides on fair use for educators in particular, but personally, I actually like to stick to fair use for creators because a lot of my material doesn't just live in my classes. Sometimes it goes onto YouTube as well. And the bar is a little bit higher when you do that. The last thing I'll say about that is if you watch a lot of YouTube, you'll see kind of an emerging sort of culture, you might say, that's in agreement on where the line is. And the more you watch, the more you recognize, like, oh, that's where the line is. If it's on YouTube and it has millions of views, it's obviously been vetted, and typically that is okay. So let me back out here, and I'll go ahead and take you to how I do a hype video, and I'll show you a video I made just this morning on how to make a video in 5 minutes. So I did this. Let me just here. So now you get to see behind the scenes a little bit. I think there's a couple other things people might be interested in that maybe you didn't even know were happening. Let me just show you a couple things before I get to the hype video. One thing I want to show you is, like, you might be curious, like, how I'm actually doing what I'm doing here. And one of the things that I do is, I want to show you, I use like this morph transition a lot. So if you look at the transition here, I use the morph transition. And what's cool about that is, like, if I just have all these dots here, and then I use the morph transition, so I use the morph up here, and then all you have to do is, you can see how that makes this cool little sliding effect, right? And you can basically do this with anything. So you can animate anything super fast. And I'll show you this other kind of fun one here. So this one, I often talk about like some tricky subjects in my classes. So sometimes I like to have this little skeptic's hammer come in, and I can, like, debate with a skeptic's hammer, and then the skeptic's hammer can, like, hit me if it wants to, and I can, so that's kind of a fun one. People asked about laugh tracks earlier, so of course I could do all that with this. And if you're curious how I do this, I think I've got a slide here. Yeah, if you want to see how I do this. So this is what I'm doing. I'm basically taking all these different sources and running them through OBS. So I can take, websites, PowerPoints, my camera, audio, and it all runs through OBS, which stands for Open Broadcasting Software. And then that has a virtual cam element, which tricks Zoom into thinking that anything that runs through OBS is just your webcam. And then that goes out to Zoom. If you're curious about that, you can go to anth101.com/OBS, and I have a whole tutorial. If you want to see, like, what I'm seeing right now, this is basically what I see right now. So I'm viewing myself through OBS. And if I zoom in here, you can see I've got my GoPro, which I'm using as my webcam. And on top of my GoPro, I've got my PowerPoint. And that's why this stuff is coming up on top of me. And I have the PowerPoint set with a Chroma Key, so you can set a filter on it. And I use a Chroma Key filter. And Chroma Key just means it's going to take a color and remove it. And I have it removing black. So anything on my PowerPoint that's black will shine through and show me. So right now I'm on a black slide and I'm showing through just fine. So that's basically how that works. There's a lot of different ways to do that. That's how I do it. So let's then see if we can get to the hype video here. Just have to bounce out a little bit here. And since this is pre-recorded, I can also answer questions by text while this plays. So I'll go ahead and play this and I'll answer some questions as you watch me edit a hype video in 5 minutes. All right, so let's say we've built our module. I've got a Buddhism module here, and now I want to create a hype video to go right at the top of it here in the first page. And let's say you only have 15 minutes to finish this up. You just have a lot going on this week. You want to make sure you get lots of feedback to your students. So you want to do this really fast. So I'm going to show you how you can do this in about 15 minutes. The way that I would do this is I would look over all these and find some really special audio or video clip that I want to highlight in some way. And in this case, I love the audio from this video here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the link address here, and I'm going to paste the link here. So this is 4K video downloader, and you can see it just basically can download any YouTube video, and it can also do the audio if you want to just extract the audio. I'm going to go ahead and grab the whole video just in case I need it. I'm going to download that. All right, so that's downloaded to right here. And I can just slide that over into my video editor, and now it's inside my video editor. And you can see I've also already downloaded a bunch of video clips from stock video sites that have to do with Buddhism. Now, truth be told, if you're trying to do this in 15 minutes and try to find your music and all these stock video clips, it might take a little bit longer, but it doesn't have to take that long. If you just go to the standard stock video sites, and I'm just going to do a quick search for Buddhism. You can just quickly download any of these that say free. You can just download these and then throw them over here. So that's how you're going to get all your video over here. Same thing with the music. I like to use YouTube audio library. So you can go to the YouTube audio library. Think about like the mood that you want. Here you can change it by mood, and I want something kind of calm and inspirational. I'll apply that and see what we get. All right, so that sounds pretty good. So now we're here on our editor. This is DaVinci Resolve, which is free. If you're not familiar with an editor, basically you have all the media you imported over here. You have your timeline down here, and then you have your monitors up here. This one monitors whatever you highlight in this window here, and this one will monitor your actual output from the timeline. So simplest way to do this, if we're trying to do this in 15 minutes or less, is I'm just going to drag down my music. And I'm going to expand that out so I can see it. And then I'm going to go ahead and, I've got this, like, I basically just want the audio from this. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the video because I just don't even need it. And I'm going to go straight into that part that I like the best.
Buddhism speaks of nirvana, which is the cessation of all suffering. Nirvana means the cessation of all suffering.
Actually, that sounds just fine to me. If I only have 15 minutes, that's a pretty nice little clip that's going to draw students in, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and clip that up. I'm just going to lay that on top of here. And I think we might have our audio already. Let's just take a listen here.
In Buddhism, we speak of
and lower
nirvana, which is the cessation of all suffering. Nirvana means the cessation, the extinction of all suffering.
Now, okay, so now we can start like laying down our clips here. All right, so the quickest way to do this now is you can just throw these down here. I know this is going to seem kind of strange, but I'm just highlighting all of them and throwing them down here. This is going to be my first cut, essentially. And now, if you only have so much time, you can basically just play with this for as long as you have, and then export it and get on with your other work that you have to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this looks right now and see what we can do to polish it up.
In Buddhism, we speak of nirvana, which is the cessation of all suffering. Nirvana means the cessation, the extinction of all suffering. But our suffering come from our wrong perceptions.
I'm just going to do a really simple title here, nothing special at all.
In Buddhism,
all right, so obviously I could do a lot more with this, but again, you don't always have time. So we're going to go ahead and export this. So we just go to the Deliver tab. The easiest way to do this is just do the standard setting. Just YouTube 1080p will be fine. And I'm going to add that to the render queue. It's going to ask me for a title. I'll just call it Buddhism. And it's ready to go. So I'll render it over here. And there it is. All right, so that's the 5-minute version of making a hype video. Obviously, it took me a while to get that proficient, but it's always just been part of the practice. And what I found is that students really respond to any effort, and they'll like really sense your effort in trying to make a class better for them in every way that you can. So for me, it was just a gradual process of just getting better and better year after year. So do I create captions or transcripts for my content? So the nice thing about doing the PDF at the beginning, the 10 big ideas, is that's usually the basic script for the intro video. And so to that extent, yes, I do create a transcript. The other thing is, as far as like actually captioning videos, if I don't have a script, there becomes a time issue, right? It takes quite a while to transcribe a video, but it's essential for an online class, in my opinion, in terms of accessibility and things like that. So I often go to rev.com, and I think it's like 20, let's see, how much is it? It's $1.25 a minute. I think it ends up being about $12 for me to pay somebody to transcribe a video on rev.com. So Rev is basically like an Uber for transcription. They always do a great job. I've never been disappointed. And again, it's this trade-off, right? I figure it'll take me like 2 to 3 hours to transcribe a thing. I can send it off to Rev, and for $12, I'm willing to like buy my time out for that. So I use Rev a lot for that. I wish, of course, our university provided it for free, but we don't have that. So. All right, so any other things you guys want me to share, or any other questions that you have? I can show you my, let's see here. I'll try to show you my, here, I'll show you my PowerPoint, and then if you see a slide that you want to see, like I've got a text slide here, like sort of camera recommendations.
Oh, I got some questions.
Yeah.
First of all, my God, you are a god. That is fantastic. The first one is, right away, very early in your talk, you were looking at some analytics that at first blush looked like you were losing the interest of your students, but then on later, examination found that they were like 200% coming down.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of ed tech is sold to us as, being data driven and analytics and stuff like that. And I fear any advice on how to be careful about thinking that the data is the learning rather than, you know what I mean, being sucked into something where you really can't tell.
Well, as an anthropologist, I'm a big sort of qualitative person rather than quantitative. And that means for me, I love doing like weekly surveys for students that are pretty open-ended. They tend to be just like, how are things going? And this week I did this, this, and this. Like, what did you think of that? Is that I almost every week I have some question out to students, and it's usually based on something I did. One of the nice things is that, you know, if you're trying something new, it not only like signals to students like, hey, I did something new here, how'd it go? It signals to them that you did something new, first of all, which is great because they like to think that they're getting something new and fresh. And then it also signals to them that you care what they think and how it's impacting their learning. So I'm a big qualitative person. I love doing weekly surveys. I'll do those both as an open discussion that's everybody can see. And then I always have a link for an anonymous survey link as well. So that's pretty much a weekly thing for me. And I put a lot more stock in those. But I also pay a lot of attention to whether or not people are doing the assignments, how well they're doing the assignments. I think those are kind of the main sort of indicators for me, you know, rather than, you know, just sort of raw stats, but like really like, are they getting it? You know, and if they're not getting it, then I need to change things up a little bit.
Cool. I'm getting a lot of requests for like a laundry list of the tech you use.
Yeah.
I heard GoPro, I heard DaVinci Resolve.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that video sort of covered a lot of it. The 4K video downloader to get stuff, but mostly I do most of my stuff inside DaVinci Resolve, which I love that that's free. I actually do subscribe to a stock video site. I use Storyblocks, and I use, for music, I now use Epidemic Sound, and I've used pretty much all of them. Epidemic Sound is $144 a year. Storyblocks is like $200 a year. So again, this is just, you know, you have to sort of weigh it for yourself. I found there were some efficiencies in having like a huge stock video, you know, sort of pool rather than just the limited ones of the free ones. So it says here, if you had the ability to purchase a premium software in place of OBS, do you think it'd be worth the money? I haven't found it yet. It's possible. I find OBS to be like, it was, you know, I think it just gets easier and easier every iteration, and they just released version 27. So I don't know. I'm pretty happy with OBS.
Can you give an example of a 1 hour activity?
And oh, sure. So I teach these world religions, right? So this is going to sound silly, but a lot of my activities are, you know, things like, you know, if I'm teaching Buddhism, I basically present, okay, here are 5 different Buddhist practices. Spend, you know, 10 minutes a day doing one of these, and maybe try out a few of them. And so, you know, meditate, practice sending loving kindness to other people. You know, whatever it might be, I have them practice those things. So that's, you know, Buddhism, that's an easy one. When we get to Chinese religions, I have them honor their ancestors. And these are things that just, I want them to like get in the feel of this different sort of religious perspective. And every week we do something like that. They tend to be fun. They tend to be community building. But you also have a space there, if they know there's a weekly activity, to put in something more serious. So sometimes that activity will actually be, you know, create a timeline of the world's religions from 30,000 years ago to the present, which is obviously a bit more academic and difficult. But it's built right into the structure of the class. I have a question here from Roger. He says, how do you lead discussions in class? What kind of balance do you aim for between written and spoken interaction? All right, so this has evolved a lot over the years, and I'm really happy with how things worked out this last year. This is the first time I can answer this question in a way that I feel like I've got a good answer. And the reason why is, like, if you have online discussions, you know how bad they can be, especially in classes like the ones I teach. You know, there's the joke of like, you know, one student saying like, I love bread. And then the other student saying, that's so interesting that you love bread. I love bread too. You know, and that's pretty much how these discussions can go. You know, people, like if you require people to respond twice or something like that, they go and respond twice, but it's just, they're terrible responses. You know, they're obviously fabricated and not authentic and real. So what I've done now is I've shifted from the primary space is not a discussion, but it's a reflection. And this is just recognizing that for a lot of students, this is an asynchronous class. they're doing it on their time and they want to just go once and do their reflection. So I just honor that. I just say, okay, you're going to do a deep reflection, and there's requirements for what a deep reflection is. And then some students really want a discussion. So you give them the option. And those who opt into the discussion are people who actually want to go check back in. They want to express an idea and go back and see like what people thought of it. So I just go ahead and just let people self-sort in that way. And that makes the discussions like really great because they're full of people who actually want to discuss and have a back and forth. And then the reflections are also really great because it's honoring like what they actually want to do. They want to just do their own personal reflection. So that's what I do in terms of like, you know, an online class. And again, this is an asynchronous online class, so it would be different. I would say I do have synchronous online classes, which are much smaller when I have like 12 students. And I actually just prefer to do Zoom discussions for those. And usually we do those around student work. So I like to have a student say like, you are going to come this week and you're going to present your work, and then we're going to discuss that work. And that puts a student at the center rather than me at the center. And I think that works really well. What type of machine or hardware do I use? Yes, okay, machines can be slow. So a couple pieces of advice for that. One is if you use DaVinci Resolve, you can use this feature called Optimize Media, which basically just makes all the media like really low resolution, and typically it works okay on even a slow machine. Second thing is I would recommend if you do upgrade your machine, anything, the new M1 chips from Macintosh are blazing fast for video editing, and you can get an M1 machine for under $1,000. So if you're going to spend some money, I would recommend an M1 machine. I'm personally not like a huge Mac person, but the M1 chips are just phenomenal and worth looking into. And then the other thing is you can edit on iPads with an app called Lumafusion, and Lumafusion app is $20. And it is so slick and so easy and no lag time in my experience. So I have a 2018 iPad Pro. It was like $600, I think. So, you know, that worked really well for me. So I hate to say, you know, there's, you know, have to spend money to get it to work, but fortunately the bar has gone way down. You don't need a $5,000 machine anymore to have a smooth editing machine. Can I share slides from today? Yeah, I can.
So we're needing to wrap up. So I'll ask you one last question. What you have in the audience is the trainers, the trainer situation. Can we go back and train law faculty to do these things, or are you superhuman?
Well, I train people to do this all the time, and I think people are often surprised at. I wouldn't say it's easy, but there's a nice sort of feedback loop of getting a little bit of joy for the effort you put in. You know, you do a little thing and you just feel like, even though your first thing, you're going to go back and look at your first stuff like 2 years from now, and you're going to think, man, that was crap. You know, that was not good. But in the moment, you're going to like it. And you're just going to feel good about these little things that you do. And, you know, I have like, I have dozens of victories every day, and most people never see them because I don't even publish a lot of them. You know, I just make these little things in my video editor, and they often never see the light of day, you know, but every one of them is a little victory, and I get a little bit better every time. So no effort is wasted, in the sense that it always makes you a little bit better for the next time.
That's fantastic. Michael, thank you so much. You were, that was so enlightening and inspiring. I want to go back and major in anthropology just from your talk. Thank you very much for coming. I wish there was a way to clap. I guess I can do it this way without making noise. Or people can click the raise hand. We did record this, so it will be available, folks, if you want to show it to your faculty. We're running a little bit past time, so we'll start the next session. We've got